The moment I realized my granddaughter was entering this world without me, I felt a kind of silence I had never known before. It's strange, isn't it, how joy and heartbreak can arrive in the same breath. I remember standing in my kitchen that morning, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold, staring at my phone as if the screen might change its mind. The message from my son Daniel was short, too short. "Mom, it's happening. We're heading to the hospital, but Emily wants only me in the room, no visitors. She says it's best for her stress. I'm sorry." Just that. No explanation, no warmth. "No, we'll call you as soon as she's here." A part of me wondered if I had misread the words. Maybe he meant just for the early part of labor. Maybe there would be a moment later, a moment where someone would open the door and say, "Come on in, Grandma. Your girl is here." But the longer I stood there, the deeper the truth settled into my bones. My daughter-in-law didn't want me there, and my only child wasn't standing up for me. I tried breathing, but my chest felt tight, as if someone had placed a hand over my heart and pressed. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, filling the kitchen with a sound I had never noticed before. It felt like it was counting down, some finality, some irreversible moment I was about to lose. The first cries of my first grandchild, the moment I had dreamed about since Daniel was 12 years old and came home from school holding that clay pot he made for me, crooked and uneven, and said, "One day, Mom, I want my kids to make you things too." Kids, family, legacy, all the things I had held on to, quietly, patiently, and now I wasn't welcome. I put the cup down and sank into the chair. My hands trembled. I kept wiping my palms on the sides of my pajamas as though some part of this fear might wipe off with it. But it didn't. It stayed, and it grew. By lunchtime, I'd convinced myself that maybe this was just nerves. They were young, overwhelmed, scared. Maybe Emily wasn't thinking clearly. I had seen the tension between us grow sharper over the last year, but I never believed it would come to this, to being shut out of the moment every mother waits for, her child having a child. I kept checking my phone. Refresh, refresh, refresh. Not a single update. The house was too quiet, far too still. So I did what I always do when silence threatens to swallow me. I cleaned, wiping down the kitchen counters that were already spotless, straightening the living room cushions that never moved, dusting picture frames where no dust had settled. And with every little chore, I whispered to myself, "It will be okay. They'll call. He'll call. It's just a misunderstanding." But deep down, I felt the cracks spreading. Before all of this, before the cold distance, the clipped messages, the awkward dinners, I had pictured a very different future. My name is Margaret, though most people just call me Marge. I'm 58 years old, retired from 26 years of teaching English at the local high school. I'm a widow. My husband, David, passed away 5 years ago from a heart condition we never saw coming. Losing him tore a hole in me that I thought would never heal, but life nudged me forward one day at a time. And then my son fell in love. Emily was reserved, quiet, a little guarded, the way some people are when they're not sure they belong somewhere. From the first dinner we had together, I sensed her studying me, not with admiration or curiosity, but with caution, as though she were waiting for me to slip, to reveal some flaw she'd need to protect herself from. Still, I tried. I really did. I invited her for Sunday lunches, asked her if she wanted to join me on grocery trips, offered to help with wedding plans. More often than not, she politely declined, always with a gentle smile that somehow felt like a closed door. But Daniel loved her in that steady, earnest way his father once loved me. So I accepted her, and I loved her too, quietly. From a distance, she seemed to prefer. When they told me they were expecting, I cried. I cried right at the kitchen table with a half-chopped onion in front of me and Daniel laughing because he thought it was the onion's fault. No, I told him, wiping my cheeks. This is joy, pure joy. For months, I imagined the little heartbeat inside her growing stronger. I pictured myself knitting tiny sweaters, reading bedtime stories, babysitting on Friday nights. I imagined being there when the baby entered the world, holding my son's hand, comforting Emily if she needed it, waiting to hear that first newborn cry. I imagined belonging, but the truth became hard to ignore during the later months of the pregnancy. Emily grew even more distant, protective. She would flinch if I touched her belly, even lightly. She avoided calls. She canceled a baby shower I planned, saying it felt like too much attention. I told myself it was hormones, anxiety, maybe even fear of childbirth, but there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't place, a wall I couldn't climb. Still, I believed that when labor came, all of that would melt away. Childbirth binds families. It doesn't divide them. I believed naively that love would win. But that morning, when the sky outside was pale and soft, and my heart felt like it was beating in my throat, love didn't win. A message did. Cold, short, final. And the house became quiet again, except for that ticking clock, reminding me I was missing a moment I would never get back. But I didn't know, not yet, that the worst part wasn't being locked out of that hospital room. The worst part was discovering that while I was alone, heartbroken, pacing my kitchen floor, strangers were watching the birth of my grandchild live, online, streamed without my knowledge, without my consent, shared with people who had no right to witness what I had been excluded from. That betrayal hadn't reached me yet, but it was coming, and it would break something inside me I wasn't sure could be repaired. The afternoon passed the way winter sometimes does, slow, gray, heavy. I reheated the same cup of tea twice, though I never drank it. My phone sat on the counter like a stubborn child refusing to speak. By 4 o'clock, I still hadn't heard anything from Daniel. Nothing. No, she's okay. No, we're still waiting. No, Mom, I'll call you soon. I tried calling him once, just once. I didn't want to be that kind of mother, the one hovering, desperate, demanding updates. But the call rang and rang before slipping into voicemail. Hey, honey, just checking in, I whispered into the phone. I love you. Tell Emily I'm praying for her. I hung up quickly, embarrassed by how small my voice sounded. Evening crept in. The street outside dimmed to a bluish haze. Cars slowing, porch lights flickering on. The scent of chicken soup simmering on the stove should have been comforting, but it only reminded me that I was cooking for no one but myself. At 6:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. I snatched it up so fast I nearly dropped it. But it wasn't Daniel. It was my friend, Anita. Anita. Marge, sweetie, are you okay? I frowned, confused. Me. Why? What happened? A long pause. Anita. I just saw something online. I didn't know if you knew. My chest tightened. I typed faster. Me. What did you see? When no response came for 30 seconds, my fingers moved on their own. Me. Anita. What did you see? This time she replied almost instantly, Anita, I think Emily is live streaming the birth. I froze. The world around me, my kitchen, the ticking clock, the pot of soup, everything dimmed into a single focused silence. Live streaming, the birth. My hands went cold, then numb. My thumb hovered over the message, unable to move. I typed, finally, me. Are you sure? Anita didn't answer with words. She sent a link, a simple blue hyperlink. I stared at it, heart pounding so loudly I felt it in my ears. I didn't click it, not yet. I set the phone down slowly, carefully, as though it were something breakable. My first instinct was denial. No, Emily wasn't cruel. She was distant, yes, guarded. Yes, but she wasn't malicious. She wasn't the type to broadcast something so intimate, and even if she did, why would Anita see it? But then another thought crept in, sharp, cold, undeniable. Why hadn't Daniel answered? Why had he been so quiet all day? Why had Emily fought so hard to make sure I wasn't there? I sat down at the kitchen table. My legs felt weak. I should have closed the phone, turned off the lights, sanitized the idea out of my mind. But instead, with trembling fingers, I picked up the phone and clicked the link. The screen loaded slowly, painfully. And then, there it was. A live video, hundreds of little heart icons floating up the side, comments streaming faster than I could read. You got this, Mama. Push, push, push. So exciting. This is beautiful, Emily. There she was, Emily, my daughter-in-law, in a hospital gown, sweating, panting, hair sticking to her forehead. Daniel stood beside her, holding her hand, and someone, maybe a nurse, maybe a friend, was filming the entire thing. My breath hitched. My son looked exhausted, pale, but he was smiling down at her, brushing her cheek with a tenderness that once would have made me proud. And then, Daniel looked into the camera, right at the audience, right at them, not at his mother, not at the woman who raised him, who prayed for them, who had been sitting home all day waiting for a single update, but at strangers, at viewers, at an online community more welcome than I was. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a video. It wasn't a recording. It was live, right now, this very moment. And I was watching my grandchild come into the world the same way one watches a cooking tutorial or a makeup review, through a glowing rectangle, anonymous, distant, unwanted. There was no privacy, no sacredness, no family, just comments, likes, a growing audience. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It moved through me slowly, like a tide rising, covering my feet, my knees, my chest, until I felt I might drown in it. I whispered to myself, why would they do this? But the walls had no answer. I noticed something else, the title of the live stream, Our Birth Journey, No Toxic Family Allowed. The words blurred for a second. I blinked, read them again. No, toxic, family, allowed. A slow, shaking breath left my body. My hands went numb around the phone. I wasn't just excluded. I was labeled, defined, publicly. Without a chance to defend myself. My face flushed hot. Anger, humiliation, grief all twisting together. Did they mean me? Was that what my son and his wife truly thought of me? My pulse hammered. The comments rolled on. Good for you, Mama. Boundaries. Keep negative people out. Love how supportive your husband is. And then the comment that made something inside me crack clean in two. Is his mom there too? Emily, still panting through a contraction, glanced toward the camera and shook her head weakly. No, she rasped. She's not part of this. The nurse chuckled softly. drama. Emily nodded faintly. Just boundaries. Daniel didn't contradict her. Not once. Not for a second. I felt my heart break in real time. I turned off my phone, stood up, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't know my own child. I sat in my dimly lit living room for a long time, hands clasped, staring at nothing. I wasn't angry yet, not the way I would become later. No. At that moment, I was simply hollow. And in that emptiness, a question formed, quiet at first, then louder, more insistent. If they could shut me out of this, what else were they capable of shutting me out of? I didn't know it then, but the answer would shake the foundation of our family, and it would force me to become someone I never imagined I'd need to be. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the occasional car passing outside, the faint rustle of the curtains whenever a breeze slipped through the window frame. But mostly, I listened to my own thoughts. No toxic family allowed. She's not part of this. Boundaries. Those words, spoken so casually, so publicly, kept replaying in my mind like a cruel lullaby. I didn't consider myself perfect, but toxic. Was that really how Emily saw me? Or was it how Daniel saw me too? Around 3 a.m., I finally stood up, wrapped myself in my old knitted shawl, and went to the living room. The house felt colder than usual, as though the betrayal had settled into the walls overnight. I sat on the couch and stared at my phone for several minutes before turning it on again. Part of me hoped the video had been deleted, or maybe it had been a misunderstanding, but the notification badge told me otherwise. 3 messages from Anita, a missed call from Justine, another friend, and dozens of group chat alerts. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I went to the link again. The live stream had ended, but the replay was still there. Public, open, viewed 57,000 times. My breath caught in my throat. 57,000 people had watched the birth of my granddaughter. 57,000 people had witnessed my exclusion. The stream thumbnail was a frozen image of Emily holding the baby to her chest, her face flushed and exhausted, Daniel standing behind her with tears in his eyes. It should have been a beautiful moment, a moment I would treasure. Instead, it felt like looking at a wound, raw, exposed, unhealed. I pressed play with a trembling finger. Once again, the comments rushed up the screen. Such a strong mama. Love how supportive he is. Keep your space protected, girl. Family isn't always blood. That one stung. It stung deep. The video jittered slightly as whoever was recording repositioned the camera. I recognized the nurse's voice, sweet, professional, unaware of the storm unfolding around her. And then I heard it, my son's voice. He leaned into the camera and said softly, "Thank you all for supporting us. Emily didn't want any negativity today. This birth is about our little family and keeping it peaceful. Our little family, as if I wasn't part of it, as if I never had been." My hand shook so violently that I had to pause the video. I pressed the heel of my palm against my forehead, forcing myself to breathe. But I knew I had to see it through. Because some truths don't fully settle until they're witnessed painfully, completely. So I pressed play again. A few minutes later, I heard the nurse ask Daniel, "Any family waiting outside?" Emily answered before he could. "No, just online. That's enough." She smiled weakly at the camera. I felt the air leave my lungs. They didn't even lie. They didn't even pretend. I was simply irrelevant, unnecessary, dismissed. The video continued through the birth, something I could barely bring myself to watch, not because childbirth is unfamiliar to me, but because I had imagined being her support, her comfort, her family. Instead, I was a stranger. When the baby finally cried, her first little wail piercing through the hospital room, I covered my mouth with my hand and closed my eyes. For a moment, I let myself imagine I was there, in the room, holding Daniel's arm, whispering encouragement, being the first to tell him, "She's beautiful, honey. You did so well." But when I opened my eyes, it was just me, in my dim living room, watching a memory that wasn't mine. I fast-forwarded, unable to bear much more. Near the end, just before the video cut off, something happened. Something that made my stomach twist into a knot so tight I felt physically sick. The phone filming the birth turned slightly, showing the hospital bed, the equipment, the nurses, and on the bedside table, a printed list. A list with a title written in bold black marker, "People Not Allowed to Visit." Below it, the first name on the list, was mine. I stared at it, unblinking, my heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted out. They wrote it down. They planned it. They wanted the world to see it. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't hormones. It wasn't fear. It was a choice, a deliberate, conscious choice to cut me out, to shame me, to broadcast it publicly. And with that realization, something inside me shifted, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. The ache in my chest hardened into something steadier, more grounded, sharper. Not anger, not yet, not revenge, not ever, but a new clarity, a new boundary beginning to form in the ashes of what they'd burned. I closed the video, and I made a decision. I would no longer beg for space in a family I created. I would no longer be grateful for crumbs of attention from my own child. And I would no longer allow myself to be painted as the problem just because Emily's insecurities needed a villain. But first, I needed to understand why this happened, and I needed to talk to my son truthfully, honestly, without letting my grief swallow my voice. Morning sunlight was just beginning to seep through the blinds when I finally stood up and reached for my coat. The sky outside was pale and washed out, like someone had taken a sponge to the color of the world. My heart still hurt. My eyes were swollen, but my mind was steady. Daniel would have to answer. Emily, too. And I was going to walk into that conversation, not as a victim, not as a begging mother, but as a woman who had every right to demand the truth. Their daughter may have been born yesterday, but I was about to be reborn, too. Not in joy, but in resolve. I grabbed my keys. It was time. Time to face the betrayal head on. Time to face my son. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. The early morning air carried that sharp, sterile coldness that clings to medical buildings, a mix of disinfectant, metal, and something faintly sweet, like latex gloves. I sat in my car for a long minute, gripping the steering wheel. My heartbeat thrummed in my palms. The betrayal from the night before still pulsed in my chest, but beneath it was something steadier. Determination. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here to demand entry or force affection. I was here for the truth. Something my son owed me, not as his mother, but as a human being he had deeply hurt. I inhaled slowly, unclipped my seatbelt, and stepped out of the car. Inside the lobby, everything felt too bright, too cheerful. Posters of smiling mothers holding babies lined the walls. A young couple walked past me, cradling their newborn, their faces glowing with a joy I knew I should have felt yesterday. I smiled at them politely, though a small ache tugged at my ribs. The elevator ride to the maternity floor felt endless. When the doors opened, I stepped out onto polished wood-patterned flooring and the faint sound of lullabies playing softly from hidden speakers. A nurse at the station looked up from her computer, young, warm eyes, brown hair tucked neatly under her cap. "Good morning," she greeted. "Can I help you?" I swallowed. "Yes, I'm looking for Daniel Thompson and Emily Thompson. They had a baby yesterday." Her expression softened. "Congratulations. They're in room 317. "Thank you." But as I turned to walk away, she hesitated. Just a heads up," she said gently. "They asked not to have visitors." My jaw tightened. "I understand," I replied calmly. "I'm not here to force a visit. I just need to speak to my son. Briefly, privately." She studied my face, really studied it, as though gauging whether my calm was real or a prelude to fireworks. Finally, she nodded. "Let me call the room and check." I waited, fingers curling into my palms. The nurse dialed the number on her desk phone, murmured something I couldn't hear, then looked back at me. Her eyes dimmed. "I'm sorry," she said. "They're not accepting anyone at all." I felt a familiar sting behind my eyes, but I refused to let a single tear fall. Not here, not in front of strangers. "Thank you, I said, keeping my voice steady. I wasn't angry at the nurse. She was doing her job, but Daniel was not doing his. Emily was not doing hers as part of this family either. My feet carried me down the hallway anyway, almost against my will. I knew which room was theirs, 317, yet I stopped several feet away, standing at the vending machine alcove where they couldn't immediately see me. From here, I could hear faint voices, a nurse's cheerful tone, Emily's soft laugh, Daniel speaking in that quiet voice he used when he was exhausted. I closed my eyes. All I wanted was to see my son's face. Not even the baby, just my son. The little boy I'd raised through fevers and heartbreaks, who used to fall asleep on my chest, who hugged me after every school play, who cried when his father died because he didn't know how to fill that void. That boy wouldn't have done this to me. But the man he had become, I wasn't so sure. I stepped toward the door. My hand hovered inches from the handle. Then the door opened. Suddenly, abruptly, Daniel stood there, startled, holding a crumpled paper cup of water. His eyes, red, tired, confused, widened when he saw me. "Mom?" he whispered. Emotion surged so fast I had to grip the wall for balance. "Daniel," I said softly, "we need to talk." He glanced back into the room as though checking where Emily was. She wasn't visible from the doorway, but I could hear her humming gently, maybe rocking the baby. He stepped into the hall and closed the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low. It was the tone that hurt more than the words, a tone one might use with an uninvited guest, not a mother. "I came because you didn't call," I replied. "Because I found out about the birth from a live stream." His face paled, and in that moment, just for a second, I saw a flicker of guilt, raw and unmistakable. "Mom," he whispered, "please don't start." "Daniel," I interrupted gently but firmly, "I'm not angry. I'm hurt. and I need to understand what happened. He rubbed the bridge of his nose with shaking fingers, a habit he'd had since he was 8. "This isn't a good time," he murmured. "Then make time," I said quietly. His jaw clenched. "Emily's exhausted. She doesn't want any drama. She was really stressed about everything." "About me?" I asked. He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Daniel," I said, "you let thousands of strangers watch the birth of your daughter, but your own mother, who raised you, who loves you, you shut out. You let Emily label me toxic. You let her humiliate me publicly. Tell me why. Tell me what I did to deserve that." He swallowed hard, looked at the floor. "I didn't want to upset her," he said finally. "She's been anxious. She feels like you judge her." I stared at him, stunned. "Judge her? How?" "She said you always compare her to yourself, that you make her feel inadequate." My heart squeezed. "Daniel," I whispered, I have never compared her to me. I have only ever tried to help. And if she felt insecure, that was never my intention." He didn't answer. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. "Why didn't you talk to me before doing this?" He looked up, his eyes full of conflict. "Because," he said quietly, "Emily asked me not to." That sentence, those 6 little words, cut deeper than anything else. Because Emily asked me not to. My son, my only child, had chosen silence, chosen her comfort over my dignity, chosen avoidance over honesty. Something inside me shifted, a quiet acceptance, not of the situation, but of a truth I had been resisting. I couldn't force my son to stand by me. I couldn't force Emily to like me, but I could decide how I let people treat me. I straightened my spine. "Daniel," I said softly, "I love you, and I already love your daughter, but I will not allow myself to be humiliated, publicly or privately. When you're ready to talk, honestly, call me." He opened his mouth to speak, but I stepped back, and I walked away, not in anger, in dignity. As I reached the elevator, I didn't cry. I felt the hurt, but I also felt a new strength rising inside me. I had confronted the truth. He had shown me who he was in this moment, and I knew the next step would not be emotional. It would be deliberate. Protecting myself wasn't revenge. It was survival, and it was long overdue. When I got home, the silence felt different, not heavy like before, but purposeful, almost cleansing. I placed my keys on the counter and stood in the center of my living room, letting the stillness settle around me. For the first time since the ordeal began, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't begging. I wasn't trying to justify my place in a family I had already built with my own 2 hands. I was simply done. Not done loving, never that, but done accepting disrespect as the price of staying close. I changed out of my coat, tied my hair back, and sat at the kitchen table. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I moved with a steadiness that surprised even me. First, I opened the live stream link again, not to hurt myself, but to document what had happened. I took screenshots, the title, the comments, the people not allowed to visit list. I captured everything, not to expose them, not to attack, but to protect myself, because if Emily could twist the narrative once, she would do it again. And this time, I wasn't going to let myself be painted as the villain. Next, I opened an email draft and typed my first message, not to Daniel, not to Emily, but to myself, a a record of the truth, a space where my feelings could be acknowledged, organized, and preserved. As I typed, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a boundary screaming to be born. By afternoon, the phone began buzzing incessantly. I ignored it at first, but after the third persistent vibration, I checked. A text from Daniel. Daniel, Mom, can we talk, please? 5 minutes later, Daniel, Emily saw that you came. She's upset. She thinks you were trying to make a scene. I slowly set the phone on the table. A scene? I had spoken quietly. I had kept to the hall. I had walked away before emotions could rise. But Emily's version of the story didn't need truth, just a stage. I didn't respond, not yet. Instead, I stood and made myself tea, chamomile, the kind David used to brew whenever I was upset. As the kettle whistled softly, I watched steam curl into the air, disappearing as quickly as it formed. Reactions didn't need to be loud to be powerful. An hour later, another message came, this time from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. A screenshot, a text bubble, words I would never forget. We're asking visitors to respect our family and not show up uninvited like Daniel's mom did. Boundaries matter. Below it, Emily's name. She had posted it publicly. My breath stilled. She was shaping the narrative faster than I had expected. To her social circle, I was now the invasive one, the disrespectful one, the boundary crasher. She didn't mention the live stream. She didn't mention banning me in writing. She didn't mention thousands of strangers witnessing what I was excluded from. But she mentioned me, and only as a problem. A familiar ache returned to my chest. But this time I didn't let it spread. This was no longer about emotional devastation. It was about clarity. And clarity has a way of making wounds sharper but cleaner. I sat back down and drafted my response to Daniel. Not emotional, not pleading, not defensive, just truthful. Me. Daniel, I came because you didn't call all day. I did not make a scene. I asked calmly for a moment to speak with you. I respect your needs as new parents, but I will not tolerate being misrepresented. When you and Emily are ready to have an honest, adult conversation without blaming or rewriting facts, I'm here. Until then, I'm taking space. Please take care of your daughter. I stared at the message before hitting send, not because I doubted myself, but because this was the first time in years I had chosen my dignity over my fear of losing my son. The silence that followed was deeper than before, but not empty. It felt like the first clean breath after being underwater too long. The next day, everything shifted, not because of Daniel, not because of Emily, but because the world has a strange way of tearing down lies when they grow too bold. It started with another message, this time from Anita. Anita, Marge, honey, did you see what people are saying? My stomach tightened. I typed back, me, no, what happened? She sent a screenshot, a social media thread, hundreds of comments. At first, I didn't understand. Then, I read the first comment. Wait, is this the woman who live-streamed her birth but banned her mother-in-law? People are talking about it in another group. And another. The Miles saw the stream because someone sent it to her. My friend knows the nurse there. And then, if she didn't want family, why did she broadcast it to strangers? Makes no sense. And finally, the No Toxic Family Allowed title was cruel. She humiliated that woman for nothing. The tide was turning. Not because I asked anyone to take my side. I hadn't told a soul except Anita. I hadn't defended myself online. I hadn't even mentioned my hurt to the wider family, but truth has a way of leaking. People who had watched the stream began speaking up. Others who knew Emily from her online circles called out the contradiction. Some noticed the list with my name on it. Some recognized Daniel's nervous glances in the video. And slowly, public sympathy began shifting toward me. Not because I wanted it, but because the cruelty was too visible to ignore. The next message I received wasn't from Anita. It was from my sister, Carol. Carol, Marge, call me now. When I picked up, her voice was shaking with restrained anger. Did she really put your name on a banned list? She asked. Yes, I said quietly. My God, she whispered. People are talking about it. The whole community Facebook group saw it. I'm so sorry. Marge, her words were warm, comforting, but they also made one thing undeniably clear. The betrayal was no longer private, and Daniel and Emily would soon realize the consequences of making a spectacle out of exclusion. Not because I wanted revenge. I didn't. But public humiliation is a two-edged sword, and they had swung first. That afternoon, my phone rang. Daniel, calling. Not texting, calling. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My heart beat harder, but not with fear this time. With strength. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, he said, breathless, frantic. We need to talk. Right now. I exhaled softly, steadying myself. Then talk, I said. And for the first time, I could hear panic in his voice. Not anger, not defensiveness. Panic. Everything's blowing up, he whispered. People are saying things. Emily is crying. We didn't mean for this to happen. But I stopped him gently. Daniel, I said, this is what happens when hurt is broadcast instead of healed. He fell silent, and for the first time I felt him listening, not to defend himself, not to shield Emily, but because he knew something had gone too far, because the truth was no longer a private wound. It had a witness, several thousand witnesses, actually. And now, it was finally time for accountability, not revenge, accountability. For a moment, the only sound in the hospital room was the steady beep, beep, beep of a machine monitoring the baby. Emily stood a few feet away from me, arms tight across her chest, as if she expected me to lunge at her. The phone in her hand glowed with the paused video, my face frozen mid-movement from the day she claimed I slapped her. I kept my hands by my sides, open, visible, empty. Play it, I said softly. Emily blinked, startled. What? Play it, I repeated. Let's watch it together. Her throat bobbed, and for a moment, she looked toward Daniel, like she wanted him to step in, to rescue her from the weight of her own accusations. But he just stood there, half holding himself upright on the sink counter, half folded into guilt. With a shaky finger, Emily pressed play. The video filled the screen with the familiar chaos of last summer's barbecue, the kids yelling, the cousins running around, my sister grilling chicken while complaining it was too spicy for the baby. I remembered all of it. There I was, handing Emily a plate of food. She smiled at first, genuinely, and said, "Thank you." And I said, "Be careful. It's hot." The camera angle shifted as someone walked by, bumping the person filming. My hand moved quickly toward Emily, clearly to steady the plate. She almost dropped when the kid ran past her. And then the clip cut off. That was it. No slap, no confrontation, No malice. Just a 5-second clip, taken at the wrong angle, ripped out of context. Emily's jaw tightened. You move fast, that's all. I stared at her, stunned by the absurdity. That's all? That's your evidence? You told people I hit you. Based on that? She looked away. Something hot and sharp rose in my chest. Not anger, something colder, deeper, more exhausted. How long, I asked quietly, have you convinced yourself this happened? She didn't answer, so I continued, softer still. How many times have I asked you to repeat what you think I did? How many times have you said, you know what you did? I didn't know because it didn't happen, Emily. It did not happen. She swiped her sleeve across her nose, tears starting to gather. It felt like it. That day, everything felt overwhelming. You're always so present, always giving advice, always in control. Her voice cracked. I felt judged. There it was, not the slap, not the violence, but the truth. She never wanted a mother-in-law. She wanted space, control, power. Yet she didn't know how to say it without making me the villain. Emily, I said gently, feeling judged is not the same as being harmed. She wiped her eyes again, her voice rising defensively. You don't get it. You correct everything I do. You compare me to how you raised Daniel. You make these comments, little things. When I was a mother, when Daniel was born, it makes me feel small. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because for the first time, I understood, not agreed, not justified, but understood. I had spoken like a mother. She heard it like criticism. Even Daniel looked up when she said that, shock flickering across his face as if he'd never heard her admit actual feelings before. I took a slow breath. Emily, you could have told me that. You could have asked me to give you space. I would have listened. But she shook her head quickly, like a child caught in a lie. No, you wouldn't. Daniel always listens to you. You're his mother. You're important. She stopped, chest rising and falling rapidly. I was scared you'd take him away from me, she whispered. That landed like a brick inside me. Emily, I said quietly, he chose you. He built a life with you. I never took him from you. You took him from me. Silence. Thick, trembling silence. Daniel flinched, and Emily's face contorted with a desperate mixture of guilt and stubbornness. That's not fair, she whispered. Neither is what you did, I replied. My voice was calm, frighteningly calm, even to myself. I stepped closer, not to intimidate, but to make sure she saw the truth in my eyes. You accused me of abuse. You told your audience I was toxic. You made a list banning me from my granddaughter's birth. You humiliated me in front of almost 60,000 strangers. Her shoulders curled inward. And for what? I continued. Because you were afraid of feeling overshadowed? Her lips trembled. Because you were insecure. A tear finally slipped down her cheek. Or because, I finished quietly, it's easier to make me the villain than to admit you felt inadequate. Emily looked like she wanted to collapse. But I wasn't done. Not with cruelty, not with revenge, with truth. Emily, I said softly, I never wanted to replace your mother. I never wanted control. All I wanted was to love my son and love his child. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. Daniel finally pushed himself off the counter and took a step forward. Mom, he whispered. I held up a hand, not to stop him, but to finish what needed to be said. I forgive fear, I said. I forgive insecurity. I forgive misunderstandings. But lies? My eyes softened, not hardened. Lies that destroy relationships, those take time to heal. Emily sobbed into her hands, and for the first time since entering that room, I felt something shift. Not in her, but in me, a release, a quiet reclaiming. I wasn't begging for love. I wasn't fighting for a place. I was finally standing as someone whose worth wasn't defined by how tightly she clung to people who didn't know how to hold her. I turned to Daniel. I'm going home. He opened his mouth as if to protest, but I was not the same woman who had walked in. I placed a hand gently on his arm. Come see me when you're ready, not when she's ready, not when social media is ready, when you're ready. Then I looked at the bassinet, at the tiny bundle with the soft pink hat, my first granddaughter. My heart pulled toward her with a tenderness almost painful. I'll meet her, I said, when the truth has space to live in this family. And for the first time, I left them instead of letting them leave me. The automatic doors slid open as I stepped out of the hospital, and a rush of cool air hit my face. Fresh, sharp, almost cleansing. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing it in. My chest felt both heavy and strangely hollow, like I had left something behind in that room. And maybe I had. Part of me. Some old version of myself. The version that kept shrinking to fit other people's comfort. I walked to my car slowly, my hands trembling, even though my mind felt unnervingly clear. It was the clarity that follows disaster, the kind you don't ask for, but accept, because the truth has already exploded, and now you're standing in the smoke, with your eyes finally open. When I got into the driver's seat, I didn't start the engine right away. I rested both hands on the wheel, closed my eyes, and allowed myself to feel everything I'd held together in that hospital room. The disappointment, the grief, the betrayal, the relief. Yes, relief. Because I had said what needed to be said. For once, I hadn't swallowed my pain. I hadn't let guilt twist my spine into apology. I had told the truth, and they had heard it. Maybe not fully, maybe not gracefully, but they heard it. A vibration in my coat pocket broke my trance. A message from Daniel. I hesitated for a long moment before unlocking my phone. Daniel, Mom, can we talk later? Please don't disappear. A small, exhausted sigh slipped from me. Disappear. If only he knew how many times I had already disappeared for his sake. I typed slowly. Me, I'm not disappearing. I'm giving space. You know where I am. I didn't send a heart. I didn't send reassurance. Just the truth. I started the car. The house greeted me with the same quiet stillness from the night before. The curtains were half open, letting in a stripe of morning sunlight across the living room floor. My shawl was still on the couch where I'd left it. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. I set my keys on the table and removed my coat with movements that felt older than me. As I walked to the kitchen, my phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. That's when it hit me. The exhaustion, a deep, bone-heavy exhaustion that came not from lack of sleep, but from years of trying to hold a family together by myself. My husband had been the bridge between me and Daniel, gentle, patient, mediating. Without him, the bridge had started to crack. Emily didn't break it. She just stepped through the cracks already there. I sank into a chair and let my head fall into my hands. For the first time since all this began, I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just soft, steady tears that soaked into the table beneath my arms. Tears for the moments I missed, for the grandchild I hadn't held, for the son who had been torn between love and loyalty and fear, and tears for myself, the woman who loved deeply and was punished for it. After a while, when the tears finally slowed, I wiped my face and sat upright again. Something inside me felt different now, not broken, rearranged. Later that afternoon, around 4 p.m., there was a knock on my door. Not frantic, not angry, not soft, just hesitant. I stood still for a moment, listening. Another knock. "Mom, it's me." "Daniel." My heart lurched, but my feet stayed planted for several seconds longer. I steadied my breath before I finally walked to the door and opened it. He stood there looking more tired than I had ever seen him. His hair was messy, dark circles smudged under his eyes, and his shoulders slumped as if he'd been carrying the weight of the entire morning. He didn't step inside. He didn't speak. He just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between shame, relief, and heartbreak. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, scanning the familiar room as if it had changed since he last saw it. Or maybe he had changed. He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees. Hands clasped, I sat across from him, waiting. It was Daniel who spoke first. "Mom." His voice cracked on the second word. "I'm so sorry." My breath caught, but I didn't interrupt. He rubbed his palms together anxiously. "I should have asked. I should have listened. I should have talked to you instead of letting everything get so twisted." His eyes were glassy. "I didn't know how to handle it," he whispered. "Emily kept saying she felt unsafe, and after Dad died, He swallowed hard. "I didn't want to lose anyone else." The vulnerability in that single sentence pierced me. "Daniel," I said softly, "you wouldn't have lost me by telling me the truth." He shook his head. But Emily was terrified. She convinced herself of things. And I know it sounds stupid, but when you're in a room with someone crying and saying they're scared, you start believing it too. That painfully I understood. Fear can grow faster than truth. I thought avoiding conflict would make things better, he said, but it just made everything worse. I nodded slowly. Silence always does. He looked up at me, eyes full of regret. "Mom, I want you in my daughter's life. I want you in my life. I don't want things to be like this." My chest tightened. "Then things have to change," I said. "Not just apologies, behavior, boundaries, respect." He nodded instantly, desperately. "I know, I promise." Then he hesitated. "Emily." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "She knows she crossed a line. She had a panic attack after you left. I'm not saying that excuses anything, just that she broke too." I closed my eyes briefly. I didn't want her broken. I just wanted her honest. When I opened them again, Daniel was watching me with a mixture of hope and fear. "Can you give us a chance to fix this?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I can," I said, "but not today, not tomorrow, not until she understands what she did, not defensively, not emotionally, but truthfully." He nodded again, tears spilling now. "And," I added, "not until I am ready. I am allowed to heal too." He wiped his face, exhaling shakily. "Okay, I understand." For the first time in months, his voice sounded like the little boy I raised, not the man navigating someone else's storms. As he stood to leave, he paused. "Mom," he said softly. "Yes, would you like to see a picture of the baby?" My throat tightened. Yes, I whispered. I would. He handed me his phone, and there she was, my granddaughter. Pink cheeks, tiny hands, dark hair sticking up like soft little feathers. My breath left me in a trembling sigh. She's beautiful, I murmured. Daniel smiled through his tears. She looks like Dad. Something in me cracked open and healed all at once. When Daniel left, promising to come again tomorrow, I closed the door gently behind him. Then I looked down at the picture he had sent to my phone. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. That night, sleep came slowly, uneven, shallow. I lay awake long after midnight, the glow of my phone beside me, that tiny photograph of my granddaughter pulling my thoughts in every direction. Hope, fear, longing, unanswered questions. What kind of world had she just been born into? One where families live-streamed their private moments to strangers. One where boundaries vanished as quickly as emotional storms rose. Around 3 a.m, I finally drifted off, only to wake again before dawn, the early light barely brushing the curtains. My phone buzzed. This time, not a message, a notification. You were mentioned in a post. My stomach sank. I sat up, clicked it open, and felt a tremor run down my arms. It was a group post, a community moms forum, tens of thousands of members. Someone had uploaded the live stream clip. Not the whole thing, just the part where a nurse had turned the laptop around, and my face, my shocked, confused, heartbroken face, filled the screen. No sound, just my expression. Frozen in betrayal, the comments came in fast. Poor Grandma. That DIL is toxic. Imagine doing this to a mother-in-law. Grandma deserved to be there. Some women push good people away for no reason. Then others, we don't know the full story. Maybe the MIL is controlling? Drama on both sides, probably. My throat felt tight. People were already picking sides, passing judgment, creating narratives. They didn't know me. They didn't know my family. They didn't know the real story. I set the phone down, my hand trembling slightly as I pressed my palm over my chest. This is the consequence, I thought, not punishment, but the strange, messy truth of what happens when private pain becomes public spectacle. And none of us asked for this, but one of us caused it, Emily. Later that morning, Daniel arrived again, this time with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me without speaking. His face was wrong, too pale, too tense. I recognized the look. Something had happened. Sit, I said quietly. He did. For a long moment, he stared into his cup. Then, Emily saw the posts. Of course she did. He swallowed hard. She's been crying since 5 a.m. She thinks everyone hates her now. I inhaled slowly. Daniel, I said, this didn't come from me. I know, he whispered. But pain sat heavy in his voice. This isn't just about the video, he continued. People posted screenshots of old photos from my social media. Someone found her TikTok. Someone dug up her old blog. It's everywhere. I pressed my fingers together, composing myself. This is why privacy matters, I said gently. This is why live streaming, something sacred, something vulnerable, can spiral. He nodded, eyes closed for a moment. She feels targeted, he said. She says she made a mistake, and now the whole world wants to punish her. My jaw tightened before I could stop it. She didn't make a mistake, I said softly. She made a choice. Daniel winced, but he didn't argue. I told her she needs to apologize to you, he said, not just for the birth, for the whole thing, for how she treated you before, for refusing to let you in." He let out a heavy breath. "But she's ashamed, Mom. And when she's ashamed, she gets defensive. She shuts down." I listened quietly. I could almost see Emily curled inward, drowning in her own guilt. Shame can be its own prison. "Daniel," I said, "what she's feeling now is the result of her actions. And consequences, real consequences, are sometimes the only thing that teaches us to change." He nodded again, slowly. Then his voice cracked. "Can you talk to her?" he whispered. The question hit me like a slow, steady wave. Not painful, just heavy. I sat with it, with the memory of her glare in the hospital, with the memory of her fear in that white room, with the knowledge that she was still the mother of my grandchild. "I can talk to her, I said finally. "But I won't protect her from the truth, and I won't pretend this didn't hurt me." He lowered his head. "I know." "Bring her here," I said. "Not today, but soon." He looked up, relief and fear mixing in his eyes. "Thank you." 2 days later, when the knock came, I felt my pulse thrum at the base of my throat. Daniel stood on my porch holding the car seat. A tiny bundle was tucked inside, peach blanket, embroidered name, little hat with bare ears. Behind him, slightly hidden, stood Emily. Her posture was small, her eyes red, her hands gripped together as though holding herself upright. I opened the door wider. "You can come in," I said. Daniel stepped inside, setting the car seat gently on the couch. Emily paused at the threshold, her breath hitched. Then she walked in slowly, eyes lowered. I gestured toward the chair across from me. She sat. Daniel remained standing, as if unsure of where he belonged in this moment. Silence hung between us, thick, trembling. Finally, Emily lifted her eyes, and for the first time since I'd known her, there was no defensiveness, no sharpness, no edge, just raw, quiet fragility. "Mrs. Harding," she began, then stopped. Her throat worked once, twice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It wasn't performative. It was small and real. For shutting you out, for assuming the worst, for thinking you'd hurt me, for not trusting you." Her breath broke. I was scared. I was hormonal. But those aren't excuses. I didn't treat you with kindness. And then the live stream. I don't even know what I was thinking anymore. I'm ashamed. Her shoulders shook as she wiped at her eyes. When I saw the posts, I realized people saw me exactly how I behaved. And they were right. I let her finish. I didn't interrupt. When she quieted, I spoke softly. "Emily, I never wanted a fight with you. I only wanted to love my son's wife and meet my granddaughter with joy. I wanted to be part of your life, not to control it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I was hurt," I continued, "not just by being shut out of the birth, but by being treated as if my presence was dangerous." She winced. I leaned forward. "But listen to me carefully. I don't hate you. I don't want people tearing you apart online. I don't want you punished. I just want honesty, respect, and boundaries." Emily nodded, crying harder now. "I can give you that," she said. "I want to, I promise." Then she hesitated, glanced at the car seat, and whispered, "Would you like to hold her?" My breath caught. Yes, more than anything. But I answered softly, with grace. "I would love that." Daniel exhaled, shoulders sinking in relief, as he lifted the tiny bundle from the seat and placed her gently into my arms. She was warm, soft, knew. Her little fingers curled instinctively around mine. And in that moment, in that single, quiet, holy moment, all the noise faded. Everything ugly, everything painful, everything complicated. It was just me and my granddaughter and a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for months. Emily watched me, her face trembling, but open, for the first time, truly open, and I knew then we weren't fixed, but we were finally starting. I held my granddaughter the way I once held her father, close enough to feel her breath, careful enough to fear breaking her, grateful enough to tremble. Her weight was tiny but profound, like she carried an entire new chapter on her small chest. She made a soft sound, a squeak more than a cry, and her eyelids fluttered. I brushed a fingertip over her cheek, warm, silky, fragile in that way that makes adults instinctively promise the universe without speaking. Emily watched me with a look I couldn't name, something between awe and fear and relief. Perhaps she'd expected me to recoil, or reject the moment, or cradle the baby with bitterness instead of tenderness. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. This child had done nothing wrong. And in her tiny, sleepy existence, she had already started stitching together the edges of something broken. When I finally looked away from the baby and back at Emily, I caught her wiping tears before they could fall. "I'm not good at this kind of thing," she whispered, "apologizing, facing people when I've messed up." "You're doing fine," I said quietly. She shook her head. "You don't know how many nights I stayed awake thinking you hated me, thinking you thought I wasn't good enough for Daniel. I let those thoughts grow until they felt real. I studied her, really studied her. The tightness in her shoulders, the way she kept her arms folded like she needed to hold herself together, the way her eyes darted down whenever she said something vulnerable. Emily hadn't been cruel for sport. She had been scared, and fear, unaddressed, becomes hostility. That much I knew well. "Emily," I said softly, "you don't have to be perfect for me to accept you. I've never wanted perfection." She let out a shaky breath. "I know that now." Daniel moved closer to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She leaned into it, but lightly, as if she didn't feel she deserved full comfort yet. "This family can work," I said, "but only if we're all honest. No more secrets, no more trying to protect feelings by hiding the truth. It doesn't work. It only builds resentment." Daniel nodded quickly. "We agree, both of us." Emily's voice cracked. "Especially me." I shifted the baby slightly as she stirred, a tiny sigh escaping her lips. "What will we call her?" I asked quietly. Daniel's face softened. "We named her Grace." Grace. The word settled over the room like a warm blanket. "Grace Harding," I murmured. "It suits her. It suits this moment," Emily said, her voice trembling just enough that I knew she meant it deeper than the words alone. Daniel stayed for an hour while Emily rested on the edge of the couch, shoulders slowly unfurling as she watched her baby safe in my arms. She wasn't tense anymore, not guarding, not suspicious, just tired, human. When it was time for them to go, Emily stood up hesitantly. "Mrs. Harding, I don't know what you want to be called as a grandmother." I smiled softly. "Call me Margaret. But Grace, she can call me whatever she grows up to say." A tiny smile tugged at the corner of Emily's mouth. On their way out, Daniel hugged me, longer than usual, tighter, like a man who had almost lost someone and realized it too late. "Thank you," he whispered. I brushed his cheek the way I used to when he was little, Go home, Daniel. Take care of your family. When the door closed behind them, the silence in the house felt different. Not lonely, just waiting. The next morning, something unexpected happened. I logged onto the moms group again, not to engage, just to see if the chaos had calmed. But someone had posted something new. A long message from Emily. She apologized publicly, not dramatic, not defensive, not blaming hormones or stress, just honest. She wrote about fear, about insecurity, about treating people poorly because of her own wounds. She wrote that she was wrong, full stop. She wrote that I deserve better. People responded with surprising kindness. It takes courage to admit this. Good on you for owning your mistake. Postpartum emotions are real, but accountability is real too. Wishing healing for your family. The tone of the entire thread shifted from judgment to reflection. It wasn't perfect. The internet never is, but it was human. And for the first time since the hospital, I felt something unclench inside me. Around noon, my neighbor Jenny knocked on my door. The same Jenny who saw the live stream first and alerted me. She held a casserole dish, still warm. I figured you could use a meal, she said. Families drain as much energy as they give. I laughed softly. You're not wrong. She placed the dish on my counter, then turned to me with a sigh. Margaret, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad it's moving in the right direction. I nodded slowly. So am I. She hesitated before continuing. It must feel strange, she said, living in the middle of a story that the whole town suddenly has opinions about. I smiled at the truth of it. It's strange, but life goes on. Jenny squeezed my arm in a way only older friends can, gentle, but full of understanding. You deserve joy with that baby, she said, and boundaries with that daughter-in-law. Amen to that, I murmured. Later that evening, as the sky turned gold outside my window, I received a message from Emily. Not long, not emotional, just real. Emily, thank you for today, for listening, for being gentle. I was afraid you'd never let me close again. Emily, I want to rebuild things, slowly, honestly, for Grace, for Daniel, and for us. Emily, would it be okay if you visited tomorrow? I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I doubted my answer, but because I wanted to reply with the same honesty she was offering. Finally, I wrote, me. Yes, I'd like that. Slowly is good. Honesty is better. Then, me. And Emily, I'm proud of you. 3 dots flickered. Then, Emily, thank you. No fancy words. No perfect ending. Just progress. The kind that matters. That night, I sat on my back porch, wrapped in my softest shawl, the warm casserole in my belly, and the cool evening air brushing my face. For the first time in months, the world felt breathable. Not perfect, not finished, not neatly tied, just breathable. The stars came out gradually, one by one, soft and steady like they always do, without asking permission or waiting for the right moment. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up slowly, like starlight, quiet, tender, patient. And as I sat there, arms wrapped around myself, I whispered into the night, I'm ready, ready to forgive, ready to rebuild, ready to be a grandmother, ready to be myself again. The next morning, sunlight streamed into my kitchen in soft golden squares. I was slicing fresh fruit, something simple, peaceful, when my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. We're ready whenever you are. Come whenever you feel comfortable. There was no pressure in his words, no guilt, no frantic hope, just respect. That alone made my eyes sting a little. I slipped on my cardigan, tied my hair back, and stood at the door for a long moment before stepping outside. The world felt different, or maybe I did. Either way, the quiet morning seemed to hold me gently as I walked to my car. When I reached Daniel and Emily's house, the curtains were open. Sunlight poured onto the front porch, catching on the small wooden wind chime. They'd hung it the week before Grace was born. I knocked softly. Emily opened the door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two women who had hurt each other, who wanted to move forward, who didn't quite know how to begin. Then Emily stepped aside. "Please, come in." Her voice was steady, but her fingers were curled together the way they always were when she was nervous. I walked in slowly. The house was quiet, clean, peaceful, smelling faintly of lavender baby wash. A tiny cry drifted from the nursery, and Emily immediately tensed, ready to go. But Daniel stepped out holding Grace in the crook of his arm. "There she is," he said softly. Wide awake and already bossing us around, the three of us laughed lightly, carefully. The sound felt tender, like something growing in its earliest stage. Daniel kissed Grace's forehead and passed her to me. My heart softened all over again. Her eyes were open this time, dark, curious, searching. She blinked once, twice, then stared up at me with a seriousness I couldn't help but adore. "Hello, little one," I whispered. Her tiny mouth twitched, almost like she was thinking hard about something important. I held her close, the warmth of her body seeping into my arms like sunlight. Daniel and Emily sat across from me, watching. Emily's expression wasn't guarded this time. It was hopeful. "We talked," Daniel said quietly. "A lot. About boundaries, about respect, about how things got this bad." Emily nodded, her hands unclenching in her lap. "And," Daniel continued, "we want you to know that things will be different now. Not perfect, but different." Emily inhaled deeply. "I want you in Grace's life," she said. "I want her to know all of her family, but we need to build trust, slowly, consistently, and I need to work on my reactions, my assumptions." I studied her, not judging, just understanding. "That's all I ask," I said. "Honesty, communication, respect, even when it's uncomfortable." Emily nodded again. "I can do that. I want to do that." She hesitated, then added softly, "And I hope one day you'll feel like you can trust me too." Something inside me softened at those words. Not forgiveness, not yet, but openness. "I'm willing to start," I said. "That's enough for now." Emily's shoulders dropped in relief. Daniel stood, moved behind her, and rested his hands gently on her shoulders. The gesture was small, but something about it hit me. The way he supported her without diminishing me, the way he balanced his love instead of splitting it. This was growth. For the next hour, I stayed, quietly, peacefully, holding Grace, feeding her, rocking her, whispering to her. Emily watched with a softness I hadn't seen before. At one point, she said, "I've never seen her so calm with anyone but me." Her voice wasn't jealous. It was surprised and a little touched. Babies know love. They feel it before they understand it. And as I held Grace against my chest, her tiny breaths warming the fabric of my blouse, I felt something settle inside me. A homecoming, not to a place, to a role. I wasn't just Daniel's mother anymore. I was someone's grandmother. When Grace finally dozed off in my arms, Daniel took her gently and put her down in the bassinet nearby. Then Emily spoke quietly. Margaret, can we talk about the hospital? I want to explain, not to justify, but to be honest. I nodded. She took a deep breath. I was terrified of giving birth, terrified of something going wrong, and terrified of disappointing you. That made me blink. Me? She nodded quickly. You were so close to your husband, so strong in your grief, so composed, and I felt like I couldn't live up to what you expected of me. I felt small. Her voice wavered. And when I feel small, she said, I get defensive. I push people away. I leaned back slightly. That made sense. Painful sense. Emily, I said gently, I never expected you to be perfect. I only wanted us to have mutual respect. I know, she whispered, but in my mind, if I messed up, even a little, you'd judge me. So I built a wall before you could. I exhaled slowly. I wasn't judging you, I said. I was grieving. And maybe you saw my grief as disapproval. Emily pressed her lips together, repeating the idea in her mind, as if hearing it for the first time. Daniel squeezed her knee gently. No one teaches you how to blend families, he said. We all messed up. I nodded. Yes, but we're owning it now, and that's what matters. Emily wiped a tear. But the live stream, her voice cracked. That was wrong. I know that. I can't take it back, but I can learn from it. I believed her, not because her apology was perfect, but because it was vulnerable. The truth sounded like truth. So I gave her something back. I forgive you, I said quietly. Not instantly, not completely yet, but truly, genuinely, I forgive you. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders shaking with relief. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Grace slept on, peaceful, unaware that her 3 adults had just taken the first real step toward being a family. When it was time for me to go, Emily walked me to the door. Just as I stepped outside, she reached for my hand. Thank you for coming, she said softly, and for giving me another chance. I squeezed her fingers gently. Thank you for asking. She nodded, a small shy smile pulling at her mouth. Then she said something that stayed with me long after I drove away. I want Grace to grow up knowing strong women. And I want you to be one of them. The words warmed me all the way home. I sat on my porch again, the breeze warm against my skin, the world humming in that gentle way it does at dusk. And I realized something. Healing wasn't a moment. It was a series of moments, soft, steady, imperfect, that slowly stitched us back together. And we were stitching, carefully, honestly, together. I've shared this story with you, not to dwell on hurt, but to show what can happen when fear, pride, and misunderstanding take over the spaces where love should live. Life doesn't come with instruction manuals for family, for in-laws, or for grandchildren who arrive and change everything overnight. Sometimes we stumble, sometimes we lash out, and sometimes we need someone to gently remind us that honesty, respect, and patience are the only bridges back to each other. Holding my granddaughter for the first time, after all the confusion, fear, and missteps, I realized something simple yet profound. Relationships are never about control, and love is never about perfection. It's about showing up, speaking the truth, and listening even when it's hard. Boundaries, forgiveness, and courage, those are the tools we all need. And sometimes the smallest steps, just choosing to be present, choosing to speak gently, choosing to let someone in, make all the difference. I hope this story reminds you that families are messy, that misunderstandings happen, that sometimes the people we feel betrayed by are also the people most in need of grace. And I hope it reminds you, too, that you can find your voice, set your boundaries, and still open your heart to love. Even after the hurt feels unbearable, would you have confronted the situation the way I did, or would you have stayed silent, hiding your pain? Think about it, and if this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments below, because every family has a story, and sometimes sharing it helps heal not just ourselves, but the people we love the most.